So let's get started. Well, hello everyone, and welcome. I'm pretty excited today. I've got tons of great demos to show you guys. But before I get into all those demos, let me tell you how I think about this area of Office document solutions through a little story. One of our most popular KB articles we have out there for Office talks about how automating Office client applications like Word, PowerPoint, and Excel is not supported on the server. Now, the funny thing is, if you actually go take a look at this KB article, not only does it tell you that it's not supported, but it goes to great lengths telling you how to actually go do it. So on the one hand, we say, don't do it. On the other hand, we give you tips on how to do it. Now, we do this because we know there are customers out there, probably some of you guys out there right now, that are relying on automating Office to complete your Office document solutions. In fact, a couple of years ago, a few of us on our team went on a customer visit. This customer took us to a room full of servers. There must have been like 100 servers in this room, each running the latest and greatest hardware technology. Right? We're talking about multi-core, tons of RAM, tons of everything. And to our astonishment, each and every one of these machines were dedicated to running one instance of Word, which is kind of crazy, because if you think about it, Word only can handle one CPU at a time. Not only that, but because automation can stop at any point in time, these guys needed to go and hire people to go reboot the machines every few hours. And they needed 100 machines to get throughput that met their demands. Now, that's what I consider the old school world of Office document solutions. My name is Ziad Rejabi. I'm a program manager in Office. And today, I'm going to show you how to leverage the OpenXML file formats, the OpenXML SDK, and Office services to create rich Office document solutions that work on the client and on the server, like SharePoint, without ever needing to automate Office ever again. So like I said, there is going to be a lot of demos that I'm going to show today, and hopefully I can pack everything up here in just an hour. And don't worry about the source code to all these demos. I will give you the source code to all these demos, plus a whole bunch more at the end of the talk, so stay tuned for those details. So we're going to talk about what makes a new school world solution. Specifically, we're going to talk about the file formats, the SDK, and Office services. But before we get into that, let's take another look at the old school world a little bit more. So in this room, how many of you guys are relying on automating Office to complete your solutions right now? OK, that's actually quite a few of you guys. So for this next demo, or for actually the first demo here that I'm going to show you guys, imagine a scenario where I work for a company called AdventureWorks. AdventureWorks, like other companies, sells a bunch of products. And what I need to do is I need to go and send a bunch of invoice statements as PDF files to my customers. Now, the way that I'm going to do this demo is I'm actually going to automate Word to go do it. So imagine I have an invoice template that I've already defined. And there's nothing really special about this invoice template. And here it is. And the invoice template is going to contain regions inside there marked with content controls. Content controls are a new feature that were introduced into Word 2007. And this feature allows me to add semantic structure to my document. In this case, these content controls are going to define the regions in my document that's going to contain the data that I'm going to get from my database. So specifically here, here's a content control that's going to contain the company name of the customer that this invoice is getting sent to. Similarly, here's the content control on the ship date. And I have content controls throughout the whole entire document. And I'm basically using the content controls just for semantic structure so I can know where to put my data. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and run this code here. And all this is going to do is going to automate Word. And let me go ahead and run this. And it's going to go automate Word, and we'll open up this invoice template and inject the data. Now, as a comparison point, I'm going to let this run for a little bit. And just as a comparison point, let's compare that to a new school world. So in this case, I have a SharePoint library here where I've defined my own web part. And what this thing is, and the web part here is going to do, it's going to allow me to connect to my database, the same AdventureWorks database. And it's going to allow me to go and get all the invoices for a particular month. And when I click Create Invoices, it's going to go then and output two files per invoice. It's going to output a docx file, which is a Word file, and then output a PDF file. And just to show you, there's nothing in these directories here. So docx folder and PDF are completely empty. Let's go ahead and choose November, hit Create Invoices. So we'll come back to that. And let me go back to my laptop here. OK, so let's see what's going on here with Word. So the way that this automation is working is it's booting up Word, connecting to my database, opening up the invoice template. For every invoice that I have in my database, it's going to go and inject the relevant data into the specific regions. Now, if you leave this running, this will work. But the thing is, it takes about, what, 10 seconds per file here to run. So if you just leave it here, it takes a little bit of time to run, right? It's not very performant. Once it's done loading up all the data, it's going to then use the Save As functionality in Word to save as PDF. So let's close this thing down. Let's see how many files this thing actually generated here. So if we go to the output folder for this solution, all right, not bad. Word was able to handle, what, 7 PDF files and 7 docx files. So if you wanted to generate hundreds or thousands of these invoices, yes, you can use Word to do it, but it will take quite a long time to do. Now let's compare that to the new school world. Now I just really wanted to make this comparison point here because I want to show you how much more performant the new school components are compared to this old school world here. Let's go back to this demo machine. Now if we go to the docx folder, it's already populated, and I'm only showing 30 at a time, but if we go here, there's 60, there's 90, and you can see the timestamp here. It all was accomplished in a matter of seconds. And this new component here, which I'm going to talk about later, is using the OpenXML SDK. The SDK was able to go and generate these files, and let me just open one up for you guys, just to show you. And here it is, same invoice template with all the data injected inside there. And that was using the new school component called the OpenXML SDK. And I'll talk about that a little bit after. Let's go back to the PDF folder here. And the PDFs are just coming in right now. But basically, the way it's working is that we're using the other new school component called the Word Automation Services, which will be able to do bulk conversions of all the docx files to PDF. Now, there's something wrong with my Hyper-V machine that's only showing 3 at a time, but I could show, we'll come back to this in a second, and it'll show you that it's also going to generate hundreds and hundreds of these PDF files in a matter of seconds. So the way that this automation service is working, it's working off of a job within SharePoint, so it's just a matter of time before the job gets kicked in. So we'll come back to that in a couple of seconds here. Let's go back to the deck. So the key takeaway here is the object model for the application is very, very rich. It can accomplish a whole bunch of tasks for you. You can definitely use it. The problem is it was never designed to work on the server, right? If you're trying to make this thing work for bulk conversions or bulk editing, it's not going to. It doesn't really scale, right? I mean, this thing can only work on one CPU at a time. It's not very performant. And like I said, if a dialog pops up, any kind of dialog that pops up in Word, your automation is completely halted. Which means that customers either have to reboot the machines or deal with these dialogues that pop up. OK, so that's the old school way of doing things. So let me show you guys the new school ways. And I'll talk about a couple of the components. So the first component here is the OpenXML file formats. So the OpenXML file formats are the default file formats of Office 2007 and 2010. And what we're talking about here is we're talking about docx, XLSX, and PPTX. And the advantage of these file formats is that, as opposed to the binary formats, these are completely open formats. They're just basically zip files that contain a whole bunch of XML parts. Now, the advantage of this over the binary world is that you can just go crack open these files and manipulate the XML directly. Not only that, but they're also an ISO standard at this particular point in time. So when I say that there are multiple parts within these files, you can imagine a document, a Word document that has a bunch of content, some styles applied to it, and then maybe even some comments inside there. Well, the comments are one part, the document content is another part, and the styles are another part. So there's a clear separation in terms of what the different parts are meant to do. Now, instead of going to write a solution that goes and cracks open the zip file and goes and manipulates the XML directly, what we've developed is we've developed an SDK directly associated with the file formats. And that's called the OpenXML SDK. Now, the OpenXML SDK is going to allow you to go create and manipulate these files either on the client or on the server without needing to touch Office at all. You don't even need Office installed. You can just use the SDK, and you can go manipulate these files. The SDK can really accomplish 3 main scenarios: pushing data into a file, and this data could come in from a database. It could come in from other files or what have you, and you can push it into the file. Pulling data out of a file, that's the second scenario. So if you have a worksheet that you've calculated a whole bunch of stuff in, and you want to pull out the data, Well, the SDK is very good at pulling the data out of there. And then the last scenario that it's really good at is manipulation. So for example, let's say you have a Word document that has a bunch of track changes and comments. You can use the SDK to go and accept the track changes and remove the comments all in one shot. Now, the SDK is built on top of .NET, which means you can use C# or VB.NET. We've integrated Link technology right within the SDK. And how many of you guys are familiar with Link? OK, actually, quite a few of you. OK, so I won't. So basically, the advantage of integrating Link is that it makes it much, much easier to go and query into a document to find certain content. So I mentioned what the SDK does do. I think it's important to mention what the SDK does not do. The SDK is not a replacement of the object model. The object model for the applications is very, very rich, and it involves more than just manipulating the file. So the SDK is definitely not a replacement of the object model. The SDK is not going to perform layout and recalculation tasks. So for example, it's not going to be able to open up a document and tell you how many pages are in the document or what page a certain word exists on. And it's not going to be able to take a worksheet and recalculate all your formulas. Another thing it doesn't do is file conversion. So it's not going to be able to take your open XML file formats and convert them to another file like HTML or PDF or docx. What the SDK does not do, this is where Office Services really comes in. And I'll talk about how the two can be put together, and they work really, really well together. So a really quick roadmap of what to expect the SDK. The SDK is released in 2 versions. Version 1 has been fully released last year. And version 1 is all about the package and part manipulation. So if you want to create these packages and you want to manipulate the parts, so add and remove parts, version 1 is a tool that you can use right now. Version 2 is what we're developing right now. And what this is going to allow you to do, it's going to allow you to go further than version 1, and it's allow you to go inside the XML and manipulate the XML. And we are working on several CTPs. So several CTPs have been released. The next CTP is hopefully coming out next month. I'm really hoping that it's going to come out in December. And that will give you support for both Office 2007 and 2010 file formats. And the final release of the SDK is going to be at around the same time as Office 2010 ships. And because the SDK v2 is going to handle Office 2010 files, we want to make sure that 2010 ships and we understand the entire file format before we release the SDK. And just something to note here is the SDK is completely free. And when the thing will release, it's going to be completely redistributable, and you can use it in your own applications. So something really quick here that I want to touch upon, and I know this is not a deep dive of the SDK, so I just want to talk about the architecture real quick on the SDK. The SDK was designed in a layered approach. So because the SDK is a file format API, we have to rely on, obviously, the schemas related to the OpenXML file formats. We're also built on top of system.io.packaging. System.io.packaging, which is part of .NET, allows us to handle the zip and deal with the relationships to each of the parts within the package. Now, the base level layer is the main layer of the SDK. The first component is called the packaging API component, and that is basically V1. That allows you to create these packages and add and remove parts. All the rest of the components here is all part of V2. So the low-level DOM component here is we've mapped all of these schema elements to objects. So instead of working with XML, remembering the namespaces, remembering all the spelling, you just have to now work with objects. So if you have a paragraph element, you just work with a paragraph object. If you have a table element, you just work with a table object. So no more needing to deal with XML directly. You just work with objects themselves. We've built in a DOM and SAX-like reading capability. So if your application needs to do something in terms of manipulating the file in terms of performance, so let's say you're dealing with an Excel file that has millions of rows and you want to actually go and deal with that stuff, well, you can go use the SAX reading and writing capabilities of the SDK. The higher level layer is what we've been developing for the last couple of CTPs now. And this layer is going to allow you guys to more easily create your solutions. So how many of you guys have attempted to create solutions on top of the file formats and resulted in a case where the application says the document is corrupt? OK, so a few of you guys. So if you ever get into that state, the SDK is going to help you there, because the SDK now will be able to go and validate your file according to what Office understands. So it will validate not only according to what the schemas say, but also the semantic level validation stuff, semantic restraints or constraints defined in the prose of the documentation. So sometimes there's a bunch of restrictions defined in the prose of the documentation that can't be represented in terms of schemas. So we are able now to actually give you guys those validation errors to help you correct those problems. And the last thing is called a component called helper functions. We've actually released code snippets for the OpenXML. They're completely free. And I'll give you guys links to those things. But basically, we envision a whole bunch of code snippets that we'll ship to you guys that will accomplish a bunch of tasks. So that's basically it for the slides. And now I want to show you a bunch of demos that we've built on top of this stuff. So the first demo that I'm going to show you guys is all about pushing data into a file. And what I want to show you guys is a really rich document assembly scenario where I'm going to take Word documents, Excel documents, and PowerPoint documents and merge them all together into one final document. So let's go back to my machine here. And just to make sure that this thing actually did work, there's something wrong with my apologies. There's something wrong with my server here. I don't know what's wrong. But believe me when I say that this thing would have generated hundreds and hundreds of PDF files in just a matter of seconds. This thing is really, really fast. So let's go to the next demo here I want to show you guys, which is the document assembly scenario. So imagine a scenario that I work for a company that is all about analyzing stocks or other companies. And what I'm asked to do is I'm asked to create a really rich report based on my analysis. So the way that I'm going to actually accomplish this is I'm going to take advantage of a new feature of SharePoint 2010 called document sets. Document sets allows me to relate a bunch of documents together. Think of it as like a binder of related content. So I've defined myself a document set for a stock analysis. And let's go do one for Contoso. And in my document set, I have 6 documents defined for this set. So you can imagine here, a stock analysis report is going to be pretty rich. It contains a lot of information. Maybe there's some information that I need to gather about the introduction or overview of the company itself. Maybe I need to gather some information on the latest news of the company, some analysis. And maybe I can put together a deck of a bunch of slides that contain a bunch of content around my analysis report itself. Maybe I have some workbooks that contain a bunch of data and some charts. So one document, these documents are actually all empty except for the template document. Let's take a look at the template document. Now the template document here that I have is just a simple template that I've created that contains a cover page, and it's also going to contain content controls. So let me just go ahead and edit the document here. These content controls, in the same way that I had my invoice template, are going to define my semantic structure inside my document of where I'm going to basically insert content from other documents into this document. So in this case, I'm going to pull in a smart art graphic from my PowerPoint deck into this location. Here is where I'm going to import the introduction or the overview of the company from my library into this document here. And then there's the news, there's the analysis, and then the last two here is I'm going to pull in a chart, and I'm going to pull in a table of data from my workbook. Because everything here is empty, let's go to one that's actually full, and that's the Microsoft one. So if we go look at the introduction, I'm just going to show you a couple of these documents to show you that they're actually filled. So here's an introduction or an overview of Microsoft itself. It has pretty rich formatting, tables. It has pretty much all the content you can imagine inside there with an image as well. If we go to the PowerPoint deck, this PowerPoint deck here is going to contain a bunch of slides. And remember, I want to pull out the smart art graphic from the PowerPoint deck. And that's going to be off of the second slide. So I'm going to take this this smart art graphic here, and I'm going to import it into my Word document. And let's go look at the workbook real quick. So the workbook contains 2 sheets. The first sheet is going to be a bunch of data here. And this is just basically stock prices, the history of stock prices for Microsoft for the last couple of years. And the second sheet here is going to be a graph of Microsoft stock for the last couple of years. So what I've done here is I've created a web part that has one button here called Assemble Documents. And let's go ahead and click it. And so the solution just ran in less than a second. That's why this dialog popped up. I'll just actually show you the result of it. So what the solution has done is it used the SDK to go open up that template document, find all the content controls. For every content control it's found, it's then going to import the relevant data from the library into this document. So here's the template document. Well, there's the smart art graphic, and it's still a smart art. Let me just go ahead and hit enable document here for a second. So notice that actually it took Word longer to open up the document than actually to assemble the document here. So here's the smart art graphic. Notice that the thing is still a smart art graphic. There's the introduction. There's the latest news. Keep going down. There's the analysis. And if we keep going, scrolling down, well, here's the chart. And notice that this thing is still a chart. And then there's the table of data. All done with the SDK and just a few hundred lines of code. And I'll show you a little bit of the snippets of the code. All done really, really fast. No more need to copy paste. You're able to do this document assembly solution right out of the box with the SDK. Thanks. So let's show you some of the code here related to this stuff. So if you go to the document assembly, let me go ahead and put this in full screen mode. Now I'm not going to show you guys all the code here because I will give you all the code here, but let me show you a bit of the snippets here. So the first thing that I want you to notice here is I'm using the SharePoint object model to go and grab the template file, and that's what I'm doing right here with this statement right here. So once I've grabbed the template file, I'm going to go put it into memory, which I'm doing in here. Grab the template file, put it into memory, and once I have it in memory, now I can use the SDK. So the SDK is very strongly typed. So it knows what a Word document is, it knows what an Excel document is, and it knows what a PowerPoint document is. So in this case right here, with one line of code, I'm able to go open up that Word document. So here it says Word processing document. I can open it up. I can open up a document from memory or from on disk. So in this case, I'm opening up the document from in memory. Once I have that, the main document, remember the template had a bunch of content inside there with content controls. Well, to get the main content, all I have to do is, again, everything is strongly typed, get the strongly typed access to the part. So in this case, get the main document part, which has all the main content. And then from there, all I need to do is go and find every content control. Content controls in XML is called structured document tags, or SDTs. So with this statement here, for every content control in my document, and get that list, and then the alias is basically the tag name that I gave it. So remember, all the content controls had names that I specifically gave it, right? So one was about a spreadsheet table, one was about spreadsheet chart. So get the name, and then for every one of those things that I find, well, here's a spreadsheet table, go import the table from the spreadsheet. Here's the chart, go import the spreadsheet, go import the chart from the spreadsheet. So on and so forth for each of the different choices here. Now, you guys will have access to this code. Like I said, this is only a few hundred lines of code, and it's a pretty rich and robust document assembly solution. It's right out of the box. So again, one thing I want to really emphasize here is the SDK is very, very fast. I mean, you saw me able to basically assemble all those documents up in less than a second. It's faster than having the document even being opened up in Word, which is a great functionality. And because everything is XML-based, you can use the SDK to go and import content from all these different files to each other. So you can import a chart from Excel sheet to a PowerPoint deck if you wanted to. And one thing I wanted is this solution was pretty easy to integrate with SharePoint. I used VS 2010. VS 2010 makes deploying SharePoint solutions really, really easy. And it's just basically clicking one button. Which is much different than it was back in the past with VS 2008. So it's very, very easy. So one question that you guys might have, and I didn't have this in my deck, but I actually wanted to show you guys this part of this demo, is how do you actually get started in learning about the SDK? And what I'm going to show you guys is actually no one else has seen this. This is actually a brand new build. And because the CTP is coming out hopefully next month, you guys will have access to this tool. So I'm going to show you guys a really cool tool that ships with the SDK for free. Now, the tool here is right here. And basically, this tool accomplishes certain functionalities. It can accomplish, so first off, you can see documentation inside here. And you can go and find the documentation from the file format standard, from how the API defines the stuff, to maybe implementer notes that are defined within the application. But more importantly, what this thing can do is it can automatically generate code for you. So let's say, for example, I have a document here called example document. It has a couple of paragraphs. This first paragraph here, is, if you notice, has a heading 1 style applied to it, second paragraph, and then a table. Let's say I don't know how to do this with the SDK. How do I generate this document or part of this content? Well, part of the tool allows me to open up that file, and then I can reflect code. What this reflect code will do is this thing will automatically generate open XML SDK code to generate that document just like that. So if I just copy paste all this content here, I will generate that document from scratch. Not only that, but because this thing is, we designed this, maybe you don't want the entire document, maybe you want a snippet of the document. Well, you can go inside the document, And you can choose the first paragraph. Here is the XML snippet for the first paragraph. And then here is the C# code, the code snippet to generate just that paragraph. So something brand new to this tool that we've actually done is we used to have a tool that was able to do document comparisons. So let's say, for example, I have two files. Let's say an Excel file. Let's open up an Excel file. And basically, this just contains a little bit of data. Let's say I don't know how to add a row to this spreadsheet here. And not only do I not know how to add a row, but I also don't know how to add conditional formatting. Well, what I can do is I can create two documents, do the operation in Excel, Word, or PowerPoint, save the two documents out. So here's conditional formatting applied, and the extra row is right here. I can go use the tool to compare the two files. So there's book 1 and book 2. Hit OK. So what I can do here is, first off, it will show me the XML difference between them. So it gives you a diff in terms of the XML. So notice here that the dimensions of the spreadsheet got changed right here. Also, here's the new row that was added. And then here's the conditional formatting. So we had this tool before, but now what we've done, and this is brand new, is, check this out. We hit this view hide code. There is the code necessary to change document A to document B. So here is the code. So basically, we've combined the document compare feature and the reflection feature together to give you this access. So here is the change worksheet part. And notice here is the new row. And then there's the content for the row. And then here is the conditional formatting applied. So you can just take that code, use it, and change document A to document B. So I just wanted to show you guys that real quick. I know it wasn't part of my deck, but I thought it was a pretty cool tool that will help you guys more easily develop on top of the SDK. OK, so let's talk about Office services. The SDK is very good at those three core scenarios, pushing, pulling, and manipulating. But it doesn't do certain things. It doesn't have the page layout. It doesn't have the calculation. It doesn't do those kind of things. But where the SDK falls short, this is where Office services really comes in handy. So a brand new service being introduced into SharePoint 2010 is called Word Automation Services. Word Automation Services is basically file conversion on the server that's completely supported. It's basically a shimmed-down version of Word that's totally supported on the server that's able to go and do certain tasks. So first off, it is basically the client. So you have 100% fidelity up on the server. Not only that, but you are able to go and use the automation services to go and convert your files from files that are understood by Word in terms of opening to files that are understood by Word to write out. So for example, you can take a docx file, like I showed you in the first demo, and then use the service to go and output a PDF file. You can definitely do that, because Word knows how to write out the PDF. You can write out MHT if you wanted to. Basically, you can write out files that Word understands. If you wanted to write an ODF, you can write an ODF for this thing as well. Now, this is the story for the printing on the server. So I know there's customers out there that need to generate a whole bunch of documents and then go and print these documents up on the server. Well, the answer to this is because we're able to go and convert files to a fixed file format like PDF or XPS, you can take the resulting PDF, XPS, and then send them off to printers, and that is your printing story right there. And this, so just to give you performance, and I know what didn't show in my first demo here for some reason, but this thing is very, very fast. So to give you a little comparison point here, these performance numbers were taken in from the technical preview. And we've done work now to make it a little faster, but I haven't got those numbers. But basically, if you compare Word Automation Services to Word, Word Automation Services is able to convert 20 to 30 pages per second. If you compare that to Word, that's about, I don't know, I mean, Word can only do about 5 to 7 pages. And if you compare that to another competitor out there, and I just took some data from a competitor that's able to go and do conversions up on the server, you're talking about a huge, huge difference. And the key takeaway here is who cares about the numbers? This thing is very, very fast. You can scale this to as much as you want. So there's an admin page for the services that you can give it as many CPUs as you want, as many conversions as you want. So you can actually throttle it back or push it forward as much as you want. So let me introduce Word services. And let me introduce it. And because this machine is kind of busted, let me go actually to my laptop here for a second. So I had a backup my backup is going to be to open up, is actually connect to my Redmond computer here. So, so imagine a scenario here, and just basically I just want to do a bulk conversion. So imagine here I have a whole library of documents, and these documents are pretty rich. And let me just go open up one of these things. Here is a document about Earth. And this document contains a lot of rich formatting, some styles, some images. And as soon as this thing actually opens, you actually can see it. But there's a whole bunch of library here, in terms of a bunch of Word documents. So what I want to do is I want to convert these to PDF. And yeah, there's something wrong with my server. Great. Give me 2 seconds here. Let me reconnect to my server here for a second. So while this thing is going, so basically what I wanted to show you guys is just how easy and fast it is to actually do this conversion. And I'll just show you the code right away, and then when this thing comes back, I'll show you exactly what this thing is all about. So let me show you the code of actually how to go and do bulk conversions. Okay, let me close that down. Okay, so what I was going to show you is basically I had a Silverlight web part built inside SharePoint that basically is going to allow me to specify an input directory and an output directory. Give me an input directory, and I'll output all the files as PDF. So this is how we're able to accomplish it, and it's only 6 lines of code to actually go use Word Automation Services. Let me put this up in full screen mode. So all you do is you create a new job, and it's called a conversion job here. And that's basically going to be a Word Automation Service job. So once you give that, you can specify a name for the automation service. So in this case, I've specified an invoice generation name. And you don't need to specify the name. I just did that myself. You get the user token. And once you get the user token, you're able to go and do a conversion. So the conversion here is just simple. It just does Word conversions, save format. And you can specify whatever format you want. In this case, I specify PDF. But if I do dot, I can change it to whatever I want it to be, right? So in this case, I can change it to docx, a binary document if I wanted to, a macro-enabled file, MHT, PDF, RTF, template documents, XML, XPS. So it's pretty rich in terms of what it can accomplish here, in terms of what it can output. And then you just specify the folder that you want to input from and then input to, and then you start your job. And just 6 lines of code, and you're able to go and generate a bunch of PDFs right on the server with automation services. So let me see if my computer here has connected again. We believe you. OK, thanks. Well, I don't know what's wrong with my connection to Redmond. But believe me that it would work. And if it does come back, I'll come back to the demo. So let's go back. So basically, I wanted to show you guys that it was really, really fast to go and work with our Word Automation Services. What I was going to show you is it was going to be able to go and convert all those files in that directory to an output, to output them to PDF. And another thing that the Word Automation Services can do here is not only does it do file conversions for you, but it can do some of the layout and pagination functionality that you want. So let's say, for example, you want to insert a table of contents. Well, you can insert the table of contents with the OpenXML SDK, but the SDK is not going to tell you the pages for the table of contents. What you can do is you can just insert the table of contents, which is just a field in Word. Then you can send the document up to Word Automation Services. Word Automation Services will then recalculate the stuff and then generate a table of contents with the correct page numbers for each of the headings. So it's a very good combination factor that you can actually go use the Word Automation Services with the SDK. So the whole concept here is services plus SDK is better together. They're both very, very fast. The SDK is very good for file manipulation, and Word Automation Services is really good for conversions. Now, let's say you have a customer that's working, or your guys are working with binary formats, and you still want to manipulate them on the server. Well, no problem. You can take those binary formats, convert them to docx right on the server with Word Automation Services, use the SDK to go manipulate those files, and then go convert them back if you want to binary files. So it's a really end-to-end solution here in terms of dealing with those particular files. So this diagram here just shows basically the first demo that I showed you, which is you have a template document. You use the SDK to inject data from a database. You generate a whole bunch of Word documents. You take those Word documents, you use Word Automation Services to go convert them to PDF. and then you can connect those PDF files to a printer, and then you have right there an end-to-end solution that does bulk printing right on the server. So what about other services out there? So we have Excel services. Excel services is not new to 2010, but we've actually added a bunch of new functionality to Excel services. And I know there's a session specifically dealing with Excel services, but I wanted to talk about a couple of things that Excel services can really do and you can use and leverage with the SDK. So Excel services is very good at recalculating your workbook. Very, very good at doing that kind of stuff. Well, it's not only good at doing recalculations, but it's also good at regenerating a bunch of charts. So why not take advantage of that functionality with a solution on top of the SDK? So imagine a scenario. I'm going to show you a demo here where I'm going to leverage the Word services, Excel services, and the SDK together and show you an end-to-end solution. So imagine a scenario where I work for a mortgage company. And in this company, let me go ahead and switch up to my demo machine here. Close this down. All right. OK, so in this company, we have a pretty rich workbook. And let me open up this workbook here. And it's called Mortgages here. And all it's going to do, it's going to take in 3 values. So I go to sheet 1. When you're dealing with mortgages, you have a mortgage amount. How much is your loan? How many years is your loan? And then what's your interest rate for your loan? Based on those 3 values, I have a workbook here that's going to calculate a bunch of stuff for me. So notice here that there's a bunch of formulas up on the top here. That's basically taking those values, and it's going to calculate the monthly payment I owe for my mortgage. Not only that, but this thing will calculate a bunch of charts for me. So here there will be a chart that indicates my monthly payments and how they would change based on my interest rate, whether or not my interest rate goes up or down. And then in my second sheet, I have some more charts that will calculate what my monthly payments will be. What my monthly payments will be if I were to change the number of years of my loan, and then the total payments of my house. So what I want to do is I want to take advantage of this workbook. I want to basically calculate a whole bunch of these things, and then I want to send my customer a PDF report based on this analysis. So here's the workbook. And again, I've defined myself a template. Let me go ahead and edit it. Same kind of concept I showed you guys before. Content controls inside here. That's going to specify the regions. And hit enable editing. So here's content control. That's going to be the mortgage amount. Here's a content control that's going to contain the chart, the payment table, and some more charts. So let's go to this other library here. And what I have here is, notice here I have an empty library. And then I have a web part here with 3 forms. So in this case, I can specify my loan amount. Let's say I want to take a loan for $450,000 for 25 years at an interest rate of 6%. Well, I can go ahead and generate the report. And what this thing is going to do is going to take these values. It's going to go and inject it into the Excel spreadsheet. And then it's going to once it's injected, it's going to go and call into Excel services to go and recalculate the workbook for me. Once it's recalculated, it's going to go and take the SDK. The SDK is going to go take that file, shred that document into the content that I want, inject it into my Word document, and then basically create my end document, and then use Word automation services to generate my PDF. So I'm having the worst luck today on this stuff. So let me go here on my laptop. This was all working like 2 seconds ago, so I apologize. So same thing again. Let's just do this again. .06, generate report. And what this thing should do is it should just generate in just like a fraction of a second here. OK, there it is. And if I click refresh one more time, there's the PDF. OK, thankfully that worked. So here's the output file. And if I go click on this output file here, hold on, it's just downloading it. So this output file is my PDF file that's actually going to represent my entire document here. So Why isn't this thing opening? OK, well, you believe me. OK, so there is a PDF file there. And yeah, and this computer is just busted. So there is a PDF file there that is basically the end result of the solution. So it's basically using Excel services, Word services, and the SDK all together to go and generate my PDF file right on the server. You have a quick question? So the question is, what if you want to do this within the document? So if you want to do this within the document, you mean generate the PDF within the document? So the question is, what happens if you want to pull data in from a file or get content from a file while the document is open? I'll show you a demo on that, and hopefully that one just works. So each component serves a purpose up there. And basically, putting them all together is like Lego, just putting all of them together and just developing your solution. So each of these components really are very complementary to each other. And the SDK is just really the glue that fits everything together. So it's really, really cool. OK, and segue into your question here is, this is not a service. I'm not going to talk about a service, but this is actually something that's brand new with SharePoint 2010. And what it is a new file I/O pipeline within SharePoint. And the new file I/O pipeline allows us to do a couple of extra things. So in the past, there were only read locks and write locks, which means that if you want more than one user to go interact with the document, you can't, because somebody else has a lock on the file. With SharePoint 2010, there's a brand new file I/O pipeline, a brand new lock. It's called shared locks. Shared locks allows you to go and basically be able to collaboratively author on a document. So one brand new feature of Word 2010 is the ability to go collaboratively author with another user. So if I'm one user and you're another user, we can work on the document at the same exact time. So what I want to show you guys is basically I want to show you guys a solution where I'm using the SDK to go interact with the document that is being opened by somebody else. So in today's world, if you want to do that, you really can't. You either have to wait for the guy to get out, or you have to create your own VSTO solution or some kind of add-in that works while the customer is inside the document. So I'm going to show you guys how to avoid that and basically just work inside the document without even needing the guy to get out. So let's show you guys the demo here. Let me just set this up here. OK, so imagine I have a document here, and let's say I'm an analyst out there, and I just want to create my report. And let's say I have a document here in my library. Let's go ahead and open that document up. And it's a pretty typical document. Just contains a bit of content inside here. Let me go ahead and enable editing. And really, there's nothing really too special about this document. It's just a bunch of content inside here. And in today's world, if I want to work with somebody else, somebody can go and collaboratively author this document with me. But if I want to give that person a task or somebody a task, let's say I want them to go add a chart to this document or do something extra to this document, I either have to create an email for them, maybe add a comment inside my document. Basically, I need to get out of context and give them that information. Well, what I want to show you guys is a pretty cool demo that we've created here that is basically going to have the SDK automatically do these things for me. So the only thing that I've defined in this document is a quick part. And quick part is just basically a reusable way to reuse content. So what I have here is I've defined a special content control called work item. And let's say I want to work with person Joe out there, and I basically want him to go and add some extra content to this document. So let's say here I want him to actually go and add a chart. So Joe, can you add the latest chart? Contoso. Well, then I can say the type. It's a graphics type. I can give it a deadline, December 1st. And then say here, work with Jim on getting the latest chart. OK. So what I do here is basically I just added a work item to this document. I'm going to hit save. what's going to happen is the document gets saved to SharePoint. On the back end, I have a workflow that gets kicked off. When the document is saved, the workflow gets kicked off, and the SDK is going to go and open up this document. So I'm still in this document, but the SDK is going to go open up this document, find all the content controls that have this specific name called work item. Once it finds it, it's going to pull all that data out, and then it's going to create a task for me on SharePoint. So if I go back here and click Tasks, well, here is the task. Let's go ahead and edit that item. And notice that it pulled the exact content from that document. So Joe, can you add the latest chart in Contoso? So let's say I don't have this hooked up, but imagine the task gets created, and email gets automatically sent off to Joe. Joe sees this item, sees this task that he has, and says, hey, you know what? I'm actually working on it. So let's say I'm in progress, and I'm, 55% done. I click Save. And when I click Save, a workflow is going to get kicked off again. And let's close that. Yeah, there's something wrong with there's some JavaScript errors here. So I don't know, there's something weird with my install here. But a workflow gets kicked off that notices that the task got updated. Well, the SDK is going to go find the document that this task is related to. It's going to go to my document. And then it's going to go and update the status not assigned field and the assigned to field automatically. So let's go ahead and hit Save. Save is a way to actually force the document to get resynced. And I hit Save. This is just some UI that tells me, hey, your document has been refreshed. This is just some of our new co-authoring UI that we've added to Word. And then notice that right there, in progress, 55%, and it's just assigned to me right now. So let's go back to the task. And this is all, I didn't even automate Word to do this. This is all using the SDK, just manipulating the file. Let's go back to the task. And the task asks me to go and add a chart. So let's go ahead and add an item, edit the item. And you can see here there's an attached file. So let's go ahead and open up Word. And let's create a chart. So there's Word. Insert chart. Sure, we'll just do the default chart. Hit Save. Save that to the desktop. We'll call that chart. Close that up. And now for the task, I can go and attach that file. So now I'm Joe. I've done the task. I've added the chart. I click OK. I say I'm 100% done. Click Save. Now the workflow is going to get kicked off again. And again, I have a JavaScript error on this thing. But workflow is going to get kicked off again. That the SDK is going to see that the chart has been inserted. And now if we go back to the Word document, let's go get the latest updates. There's the chart replacing the work item that I had there before, all at the same time that I had Word opened as a user. So I think this demo is really, really cool because it just completely opens the door for new possibilities in terms of developing on top of the applications themselves. No longer do you have to wait for people to get out of the document. You can just work on the file. You can just create one solution that works whether or not somebody's in the file versus outside of the file. And in this case, this is a really new concept for doing kinds of content reuse or kind of assembly kind of scenarios right within Word because of the new file IO pipeline. So key takeaway here is you don't have to worry about the object model. You just worry about the document. Manipulate the document, and everything is just taken care of for you just right off the bat. And again, you guys will have the code to this stuff, and you can play around with it. And I'll give you guys details on that at the end of the talk. So I have tons and tons of more demos, and I promise you they all work. And I just had bad luck today with my Hyper-V machine here for some reason. But I have tons and tons of demos. You can also find me at the office booth. I have a better working Hyper-V machine there, apparently. So if you want to see those demos actually really work properly, come see me at the office booth. I'll be there right after lunch. And if you guys want all the source code to all these demos, bring me a USB key. I will download all the demos for you guys right here. If that's not possible, find me at the office booth right after lunch. You can find me there, and you can download all the demos there. And if that doesn't work for you guys either, I will be blogging about this and providing you guys all the demos to all these stuff up on my blog, which you can find. And I'm going to give you the link to those things. The link is right here. blogs.msdn.com/Brian Jones, and you can find all my demos up there. Eric White has a great blog on OpenXML and solutions built on top of SharePoint. So I recommend that you go check out his blog as well to see if there's some kind of reusable stuff there. There's other resources that I want to share with you guys is MSDN. MSDN is a good place. We have a good page for the OpenXML SDK where we show a bunch of articles, code snippets, how-to articles on how to do things, videos. So that's a good place to actually start learning and getting tutorials on the SDK itself. We have a Connect site for the SDK, so if you guys have feedback or you want to see specific articles, you can get in contact with us there. And that's connect.microsoft.com. And then CodePlex is a great place that you can actually go visit. There's actually a lot of open source projects that we have up on CodePlex. One of them is the code snippets, the PowerShell tools. So we created OpenXML Power Tools that basically has a lot of PowerShell capabilities to do manipulation of files. So I would check that out. And the bottom two are the download pages for version 1 and version 2 of the SDK. So yeah, please fill out the surveys for the session. And I think there's some kind of charity event or some kind of thing that for every survey that you fill, we're going to donate some money for that. So good causes for that. And so questions. Actually, he got first, yeah. So the question is, if I have a document that's marked that has a attached schema to it, and I've marked up the document with elements of the schema, can I get access to that stuff? Yes, all that stuff is stored in the file format, so you can actually go access the stuff. So I use content controls, but you can use custom XML if you wanted to. Yes. So the question is, I showed you guys SDK, I showed you services. Where does all this code exist, or where does this live? So in all the solutions that I showed you, so the services all are part of SharePoint 2010. So if you can access the SharePoint object model, you can access the services. And that's obviously done on the server itself. The SDK, I've actually integrated, I've put up the DLL up on my SharePoint server. So I can access all of the libraries and APIs associated with the SDK. So my SDK solution works right on the server. There's nothing on the client machine. The clients just work with the documents as is. Yes?
Do you have a server-side solution for converting XLSX to XLS files?
That's a good question. So do I have a server-side solution for converting XLSX files to XLS? Unfortunately, Excel Services does not support the file conversions stuff at this particular point in time. So there is no equivalent to Word Automation Services for Excel and PowerPoint.
There's no plans to do that?
Maybe sometime in the future. I don't know.
So, I mean, my alternative is right now, the best alternative seems to be an open source Perl.
Yeah, so the best alternative right now is, I believe we've released source code for converting binary formats to OpenXML. Right. So you could actually go try to leverage some of that code, but there's nothing out of the box like there is for Word Automation Services at this point in time. That may change in the future. Yes?
When you were showing the PDF conversions, was that using SharePoint folders, or would that be folders on an actual network locations?
So the question is, when I showed the PDF conversions, I had a SharePoint library, or it was part of my SharePoint library. Can those files exist up on some network location? The immediate answer is no. They need to be part of a SharePoint library. But you can actually work around that by actually creating a service that exists right up on SharePoint that you can then call into that can go and manipulate your files for you. You can go bring them in, stream them in, and go manipulate them that way. Yeah, so the question is, can Word Automation Services work with documents in memory versus files that are on disk? And that's a great question, and that's something that we unfortunately had to cut this time around because we didn't have enough resources to implement. So at this point in time, there's no way to work with Word Automation Services for in-memory documents. You have to work with them on disk. Any other questions? Yeah.
SKU is this available in? Is it just going to be the top?
Yeah, so what SKU is Word Automation Services going to be available in, and that's MOS. It's not available in WSS. So WSS is the free one, so MOS is the paid one. Any other questions? Nope, so that's my talk. Thank you.